Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, señores. Aquí estamos otra vez en la clase de español. Hoy estamos hablando de dos verbos muy importantes, que son los verbos ser y estar. Ser es un verbo que hemos visto desde el primer día de clase, básicamente. Estar es un verbo que también hemos visto bastante, pero al que formalmente hemos sido introducido en el capítulo 4. Son dos verbos muy importantes, son dos verbos que usamos muchísimo y son dos verbos que pueden ser un poco complicados porque los dos significan en inglés to be. Entonces es importante y necesario aprender la diferencia entre los dos verbos y aprender cuándo usamos ser y cuándo usamos estar. Welcome back to Spanish class. We are discussing today the verbs ser and estar. Ser, if you remember, is a verb that we've been seeing since almost the first day of class. Estar is a verb to which we were formally introduced in the last chapter, and which we saw in the last class as well with the present progressive, but which we've also been seeing since the way beginning of class in such examples as como estás or como está, estoy bien, estoy cansado, etc. And so these are both verbs which we're quite familiar with, but it's really important to try to get a hang of when to use which. They both mean to be in English, and this can present particular difficulties to English-speaking students because for us, we would use one verb for all of these purposes. And so it's important for us to look at a breakdown of when to use ser and when to use estar. In chapter 4, when I introduced estar, we already spoke briefly about this, and I introduced it informally, but today we'll be looking at it more closely. Basically, much of what we're doing is reuniting knowledge that we already have. And so if any of these uses of ser or estar seem problematic to you, it's important that you go back to previous chapters and previous videos to remember the different uses that we'll be looking at. So let's take a look at them. First, ser. Ser we'll be using to discuss inherent characteristics. As I said a couple videos ago, inherent characteristics don't mean permanent characteristics necessarily, but they mean things that we consider inherent to a description of somebody. So if I say, he is tall, she is short, they are good looking, we are intelligent, he is impatient, okay, the door is red, the house is black, anything like this that we would consider inherent to a description of something. We're going to use ser for that. This can also extend to to general ages. So, for instance, she is old, he is young, that sort of thing. We'll be using ser for that as well. Ser is also used for origin and nationality, which are again things that we've seen since chapter 1. So if you remember in chapter 1, we learned the question, ¿De dónde eres? ¿De dónde eres? Which was, of where are you, or where are you from? ¿De dónde eres? And our response to that would have told our origin. For instance, soy de la Carolina del Norte, or soy de Texas. Speaking about somebody else, we could say, él es de California. Nationality is very similar. However, we're not using de in our description of nationality. Instead of saying we are of a place, we're using an adjective of nationality, such as yo soy americano, Juan es español, María es inglesa, etc. Professions and jobs, as in, yo soy profesor, ustedes son estudiantes. María es doctora. Francisco es ingeniero. So speaking about someone's profession or a job, we'll talk about that with ser. Also, possession or relationship. Remember, this was with de, which we looked at a couple of chapters ago. So if I want to say, for example, Frank's car, I say, it is Frank's car, for example. Es el coche de Juan. Es el coche de Juan. Or if I want to say he is Frank's cousin, I say él es el primo de Francisco. Okay, so that was possession and relationship. So far we've seen all of this stuff before. So if you're having any confusion, go back and look at that old stuff. Materials. This is another one we use with the word de. We haven't seen this before. But essentially, if we want to talk about what something is made out of, we're going to use ser. So for example, if I say es de metal, es de metal, that means it is of metal or it is made of metal. So I can say la puerta, the door, la puerta es de metal. Times and dates, another one that we've seen. So, time, son las 3 de la tarde, son las 10 de la mañana, es medianoche. We're using ser for all of those, as well as with dates, as in, hoy es el 30 de octubre. Mañana es el 10 de junio. For all of these dates, we'll also be using ser. And finally, this idea of something taking place, which is a new one for us. This is when we're talking about events. This could be a party, it could be a parade, it could be a demonstration, it could be a speech. The idea of an event taking place, we're going to use ser. So, for example, la fiesta es en San Francisco. La fiesta es en San Francisco would mean the party takes place in San Francisco. Okay, so it could be la fiesta es en la casa de Juan, el desfile, which is the word for parade, el desfile es en Inglaterra, in England. Okay, but meaning this idea of taking place. It would also work for the time that something's taking place. That's so la fiesta es a las 4 de la tarde. Okay, so that's ser. Most of these, as I've said, we've really seen them all before pretty much, except for one or two of them. And so any confusion, you should really go back and look at the previous chapters, and you'll have a better idea of that. Estar now. Estar, we're going to use for location. So beyond talking about an event taking place, putting that aside, every other time that we talk about location in Spanish, we're going to use estar. So that means if I'm saying, where are you? I use estar. ¿Dónde estás? ¿Dónde estás? Where are you? Or if I want to say, the book is on the table, I say, el libro está en la mesa. If I want to say, England is in Europe, I say, Inglaterra está en Europa. So anytime we talk about location, doesn't matter if this location is permanent or temporary, it doesn't matter at all. We talk about location, we use estar. Okay? Condition. Condition. This idea, the way the book says it, is a condition often the result of an action at a given moment in time. So, this means, when we looked at ser, inherent characteristics, I may say, the door is big, la puerta es grande. Right? That we consider an inherent characteristic of the door. However, the condition would be more, the door is closed. La puerta está cerrada. It's the result of an action of me closing it. Or la puerta está abierta, the door is open. These are conditions, often the result of an action. This also means conditions, personal conditions. So, inherent characteristics were I am tall, I am smart, she is nice. Condition, I am tired, we are angry, they are sad. These would all be conditions. Okay, so this is the idea of conditions as opposed to inherent characteristics. We also use estar for personal reactions. This is one we have not seen yet. This is one that sometimes seems a little bit weird, but basically the idea of this is, if you're making a personal reaction to something, such as, oh, this soup is delicious, okay, or wow, you look beautiful tonight, something along these lines, we can use estar to show this idea of a reaction. So estar meaning not you are so beautiful, though you may be, but you look beautiful tonight. And not soup in general is delicious, but wow, this soup sure does taste good. We would use estar for that. And so I can show you an example of that, as in, estás muy guapa. You are very pretty or beautiful. Estás muy guapa. This might be something that I say to my wife if we're going out for dinner and she's gotten really dressed up and is looking great. I would say, estás muy guapa. Or if somebody hands me a delicious soup, I say, estás sabroso. So if I'm talking about soup in general, then I'm talking about soup and I'm talking about inherent characteristics of soup, and I say, la sopa es sabrosa. Soup is delicious. La sopa es sabrosa. But if I'm talking about a specific soup and I'm describing a personal reaction to it at that moment, está sabroso. And finally, we use estar with the present progressive, as we've seen just in the last class. Estar plus the gerund to talk about things that are happening right now. Okay, so these are the basic differences between ser and estar. It's really important that for ser and estar, you do a lot of practice on these. Not only practice it, but memorize and really get down these different uses of ser and estar. Because if you don't have them down, this is going to be really complex. But once you've got these down and you've practiced it a bunch, it really will be quite easy. But if you don't practice this intensely, it's very hard for this to stick in. But I promise you, with a bit of practice and a bit of study of this, it becomes clear rather quickly. Okay, so make sure to do the extra practice that's offered. Make sure to follow through with the PowerPoint and the quiz, and you should be fine. ¿Vale? Muchas gracias, señores, y hasta luego. Hasta la próxima.